every great book has a message. We bring it to you in minutes. Welcome to Books and Bytes by Ray Hannar, where learning is quick, fun, and powerful.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're diving into Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky.
Fascinating book.
Yeah, it's all about stress, what it does to us, why it's different for humans,
Right.
and how zebras seem to have it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
You ever notice how stressed you get compared to, say, a deer running from a wolf?
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And it's not just because you have deadlines.
No, it's much deeper than that.
So lay it on us. What's the deal with the zebras?
Well, it boils down to the difference between how zebras and humans experience stress.
Okay.
Sapolsky calls it acute versus chronic stress.
I see.
Imagine a zebra heart-pounding, sprinting away from a lion.
Okay, classic zebra problem.
Right. That's acute stress, intense but short-lived.
Makes sense.
The zebra's stress response is perfectly designed for this. It helps the zebra escape. But as soon as the threat is gone, poof. The stress disappears. The zebra goes back to grazing like nothing happened.
But we humans, we don't really get that poof moment, do we?
Not often, no. We've got emails to answer, bills to pay, presentations to give, The stress just keeps coming.
The struggle is real.
It really is. And what's fascinating is that our physiological response to a work deadline isn't much different from that zebra's response to a lion.
Really?
It's the same system, but we're stuck with the lion chasing us all day long.
Oh, that's a terrifying thought.
It is. That's chronic stress.
Right.
And that's where the problems start.
So walk me through this. What's actually happening in our bodies during this chronic lion chase, so to speak?
Okay, sure. Well, it all starts in the brain. When you perceive a threat, whether it's an actual lion or just a looming deadline, your brain activates what's called the HPA axis.
HPA axis?
Yeah, it stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Catchy.
It's a fancy term for a chain reaction in your body. And this chain reaction releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline.
Ah, the classic stress hormones.
Oh, exactly.
I always feel them surging through my body when I am under pressure.
You and everyone else. They cause your heart rate and breathing to speed up, your muscles to tense up, your digestion to slow down, all preparing you to, fight or flee.
Wow.
It's quite a powerful response.
Okay, so this stress response, it's designed to be a short-term thing, like for the zebra escaping a lion.
Right.
So why is it so bad that we experience it chronically?
Well, because the same systems that help you rise to a challenge in the short term, they start to wear down under constant activation.
I see.
Imagine a car engine running at top speed all the time.
Uh-oh.
Eventually, something's going to give.
Right.
It's the same with chronic stress. It affects every system in our body.
So it's not just about feeling stressed, it's actually doing damage.
Precisely. And one of the first casualties of chronic stress is often the immune system. While a little bit of stress can actually boost your immune response, make it more alert,
Okay.
chronic stress does the opposite.
Wow.
It suppresses your immune system, making you more vulnerable to infections and illnesses.
So that explains why I always seem to catch a cold when I'm swamped with work.
Exactly.
It's like I'm giving those germs a VIP pass.
Yeah, you could say that. Think of it this way. Your immune system is like an army.
Okay.
And when you're constantly stressed, those soldiers are always on high alert, fighting imaginary enemies.
Right.
They get tired, their resources are depleted,
I see.
and eventually they're not as effective at fighting off real threats.
Like those cold and flu viruses going around.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a great analogy. So chronic stress is weakening our defenses.
It is.
But what about our minds? Does stress impact how we think too?
Absolutely. In fact, chronic stress can wreak havoc on the brain, particularly a region called the hippocampus.
The hippocampus?
Yes, it's essential for forming new memories and recalling old ones. But when it's flooded with stress hormones, its ability to function properly is compromised.
Oh, no.
Sapolsky even describes a study where chronically stressed rats had difficulty remembering how to navigate mazes compared to their more relaxed counterparts.
So it's not just that we feel foggy-headed when we're stressed. There's actually a biological reason for it.
That's right.
Our brains are literally being affected by this constant state of stress.
Yes. Think of the hippocampus as your brain's librarian, carefully organizing and retrieving memories.
Okay.
But picture that librarian being bombarded with stress hormones. They can't focus, they misplace books,
Yikes.
and the whole system starts to break down.
That's a scary thought.
It is, and that's what chronic stress is doing to your brain. Makes it harder to learn new things, recall information, and think clearly.
This is fascinating. So we've covered the immune system, the brain, but there's got to be more, right? What about our physical health? Does chronic stress take a toll there too?
Oh, absolutely. The impact of chronic stress on our physical health is huge. And one of the most concerning areas is the cardiovascular system.
Our heart health.
Yes. Think back to that zebra running from the lion. Its heart rate and blood pressure spike.
Right. Helps it escape.
Which is helpful in that moment. But imagine that same spike happening every day, multiple times a day.
Oh, wow.
That's what chronic stress does to us.
Oh.
Over time, this constant strain on the cardiovascular system increases the risk of high blood pressure, heart attacks, and even strokes.
So stress is literally bad for our hearts.
It is.
I'm starting to see why this book is called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
And here's another fascinating thing. Sapolsky also discusses how stress isn't just about what's happening to you individually. It's also deeply connected to your social environment.
Interesting.
He found that people lower on the social hierarchy tend to experience more chronic stress.
So it's not just about the stressful events themselves, but also about where you stand in society.
Exactly. People lower on the social ladder often have less control over their lives, fewer resources to cope with stress,
Right.
and may even experience discrimination, all of which contributes to chronic stress.
And as we've discussed, that chronic stress can lead to a whole cascade of health problems.
It's a vicious cycle.
So this is all starting to paint a rather bleak picture. It sounds like chronic stress is wreaking havoc on our bodies and minds. And it's even tied to our social standing.
It is.
Is there any hope? Can we do anything about it?
There is absolutely hope, and that's what we'll explore further as we continue our deep dive into why zebras don't get ulcers.
I can't wait. This is already so insightful, and I'm eager to learn more about what we can do to break free from this chronic stress cycle.
Me too.
Okay, so we've established that chronic stress is this relentless beast impacting us on multiple levels.
Sure.
But if we're not literally running from lions, what is driving this stress epidemic in modern life? What's keeping us in this constant fight or flight?
Well, Sapolsky points to several factors, and one of the biggest is this pervasive pressure to achieve. You know, we're constantly bombarded with messages that we need to be doing more, producing more, succeeding more.
Yeah.
It's like we're all on this invisible treadmill, terrified to slow down or step off.
It's that hustle culture everyone's talking about.
Exactly. Always striving, never arriving.
Right.
Right. And this pressure doesn't just come from external sources like work or society. A lot of it is self-imposed, you know?
Oh, yeah.
We internalize these expectations, pushing ourselves relentlessly, sometimes at the cost of our own well-being.
So we become our own inner lions, in a way.
A very apt analogy. And then you layer on social media, which is essentially a highlight reel of everyone else's successes.
Oh, yeah.
Often curated and exaggerated, you know?
Totally.
It's the comparison game on steroids.
Oh, man.
Fueling feelings of inadequacy and amplifying that pressure to keep up.
No wonder so many of us feel like we're constantly falling behind.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the pressure to achieve, is it? There's also this sense of lack of control.
That's another huge factor. So many of the stressors we face in modern life, traffic jams, economic uncertainty, global pandemics, you name it.
Yeah?
They feel largely outside of our control.
Right.
And that lack of agency, that can be incredibly stressful.
Makes sense.
It feeds this feeling of helplessness, which only makes that chronic stress response worse.
It's like being stuck in that car with a lion chasing you, but you can't even press the gas pedal.
Perfect illustration. So we have this relentless pressure to achieve, a pervasive sense of lack of control, and social media constantly fanning the flames.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that chronic stress has become such a widespread issue.
Okay, so we've identified some of the big drivers of chronic stress, but what do we do about it? Is there any way to break free from this seemingly inescapable cycle?
Well, we've talked about some individual coping mechanisms, and those are definitely important.
Right.
Exercise, relaxation techniques, mindfulness practices, those tools can help manage the symptoms of stress, provide some relief.
Yeah.
But as we've discussed, we also need to address the root causes. Sapolsky argues for a societal shift. a reevaluation of our attitudes towards stress and well-being.
So it's not just about putting on a Band-Aid, it's about addressing the wound itself.
Precisely. We need to, question these relentless demands for productivity and create a culture that values rest and balance.
Okay.
It's about redefining success, moving away from this narrow focus on achievement and recognizing the importance of well-being.
It's about remembering that we're humans, not human doings.
I love that. We need to create a world where it's okay to slow down, to disconnect, to prioritize our mental and physical health, where we value time with loved ones, hobbies, time, and nature activities that nourish our souls, not just our resumes.
This sounds wonderful, but also incredibly idealistic.
Yeah.
It's easy to talk about societal shifts, but how do we actually make that happen?
It requires both individual action and collective action. On a personal level, we can start by challenging those unhealthy expectations within ourselves.
Okay.
Give yourself permission to rest, to say no to things, to prioritize your well-being without guilt or apology.
So self-compassion is key. But what about the bigger picture? How do we create that systemic change?
We need to advocate for changes in our workplaces, in our communities, in our political systems. We need to push for better work-life balance policies, access to affordable mental health care, and a more equitable distribution of resources, so that everyone has the opportunity to thrive, not just survive.
So it's about using our voices, both individually and collectively, to push for a world that prioritizes well-being.
That's powerful.
Now, I want to touch on something we haven't fully explored yet. Sapolsky's book goes into fascinating detail about the physiological effects of stress on different parts of the body. What are some of the things that really jumped out at you?
What's really striking is how interconnected everything is. Stress doesn't just affect one system in isolation. It has this cascading effect on our hormones, our organs, our brains. It's like a domino effect, where one thing triggers another and another.
Yeah.
For example, chronic stress can disrupt sleep patterns, which then affects cognitive function and mood.
Right.
Which makes it even harder to cope with stress, creating this vicious cycle.
It's not just about feeling stressed out. It's about these real, tangible changes happening beneath the surface. One of the things that stood out to me was his discussion of telomeres.
Oh, yeah, those are fascinating.
Can you explain what those are and how they relate to stress?
Sure. Telomeres are protective caps on the ends of our chromosomes.
Okay.
Like the little plastic tips on your shoelaces.
Okay, I can picture that.
Every time a cell divides, its telomeres get a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
Eventually, they get so short that the cell can no longer divide and it dies. This is a normal part of aging.
Okay.
However, studies show that chronic stress actually accelerates this telomere shortening process.
So stress is literally making us age faster.
It appears so.
That's definitely something to ponder.
It is. And it underscores the importance of managing stress, not just for our mental and emotional well-being, but for our long-term physical health as well.
So we've explored the causes of chronic stress, its devastating effects on our bodies, and the need for both individual and societal change.
Right.
But there's one piece of the puzzle I'm still curious about.
Yeah.
Sapolsky acknowledges that stress isn't always a bad thing.
That's right. He talks about the paradox of stress. Short bursts of stress can actually be beneficial. They can motivate us, help us focus, even boost our performance. Think of the adrenaline rush you feel before a big presentation or challenging competition.
Yeah.
It can help you rise to the occasion.
So it's not about eliminating stress completely. It's about understanding the difference between good stress and bad stress.
Yeah.
And, of course, learning how to harness the power of good stress while minimizing the harmful effects of chronic stress.
Precisely. It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance.
Balance, right. That seems to be the key to so much in life.
It really is.
Balance, right? It's key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Finding that equilibrium between harnessing the good stress and kind of mitigating the bad. But achieving that balance in our modern world feels almost impossible sometimes.
It can.
So where do we even begin?
Well, I think awareness is the first step. Tuning into how you're feeling,
Okay.
Noticing those subtle or not so subtle signs of stress in your body. Paying attention to your own internal stress barometer.
Okay. Yeah.
What activities, situations, or even people tend to send your stress levels soaring.
Right.
Once you're aware of your personal triggers, you can start to develop coping mechanisms that actually work for you.
So it's about having a personalized stress management toolkit.
Exactly.
If exercise helps one person de-stress,
Yeah.
but another person finds solace in, like, meditation.
Right.
It's about finding what truly works for you.
Absolutely.
But isn't it also about, like, building up our resilience to stress in the first place? Like, not just reacting to it.
Absolutely. It's not just about reacting to stress after it hits. It's about strengthening your capacity to, withstand it. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is by cultivating a sense of purpose in life.
Finding your why, so to speak.
Exactly. When you feel connected to something larger than yourself, whether it's your family, your community, your creative passions, a cause you believe in,
right,
it can provide a sense of meaning and perspective, and that helps buffer against the negative effects of stress.
It's like having that, like, inner compass that guides you, even when the storms of stress are raging around you.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's not about denying the stress, but about finding that anchor that keeps you grounded.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But what about those times when stress is simply unavoidable?
Right.
Those situations where, like, despite our best efforts, we just feel overwhelmed and powerless.
Yeah, I think in those moments, try shifting your perspective.
Okay.
Instead of viewing stress as the enemy, reframe it as a challenge, an opportunity for growth. Remember, stress often arises when we care deeply about something. It shows that we're engaged, that we're invested.
Okay.
It's about channeling that energy in a positive direction.
Turning that stress into fuel rather than letting it consume us.
Exactly. Resilience isn't about avoiding stress altogether.
Right.
It's about bouncing back from adversity, learning from those experiences, and emerging, stronger on the other side.
So it's about, like, embracing those ups and downs of life, knowing that we have the inner strength to, like, navigate them.
Yeah, exactly. And, that brings us back to those zebras. They experience stress as nature intended, in short bursts in response to, like, real threats.
Right.
Once the danger passes, they go back to a state of equilibrium.
Right.
We, on the other hand, with our constant worries, our to-do lists, our self-imposed pressures, we've turned stress into a chronic condition.
It's almost as if we've, like, forgotten how to turn off the stress response.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it. Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers isn't just a book about stress. It's like a call to action. It challenges us to re-examine our relationship with stress, to find healthier ways to manage it, and to create a world that's, less stressful and more fulfilling for everyone.
That's a powerful message, and one that's more relevant than ever in today's world. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from this conversation?
I hope you walk away feeling empowered. Remember, you have the power to choose how you respond to stress. You can cultivate resilience, you can prioritize your well-being, and you can even be part of creating a world that is less stressful and more fulfilling for everyone.
That's a beautiful message to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the fascinating world of stress. We hope you learned something new and, more importantly, feel inspired to take charge of your own well-being. Remember, learning should be fun, and so should life. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those stress levels in check.